Robert Martin helps surveyors in all facets of surveying industries, solving their most difficult problems from field to finish, which is why we have him today. It takes hard work, patience, dedication, and a lot of tech savvy to solve the problems. And Robert has the passion and commitment to meet the task. Again, while he's here today. Robert has been in his current position of sales for NEI since 2006 and is now serving as the senior tech team leader in survey sales with a team and territory spanning into 6 states. Robert's hometown is in Arkansas, and he now lives in South Mississippi, which is strategically location to fulfill his role within NEI. He is a licensed surveyor as well in both states. He's a past president of the Arkansas Society of Professional Surveyors in 2011, 2012. And as Danny said, you can definitely find out more from Robert's YouTube channel. He's got well over 5,000 likes now on Surveying with Robert on his YouTube channel for definitely more tips and tricks for anything Trimble related. So Robert, thanks for joining us tonight, and thanks for sharing your expertise. And I'm sure this will be a good topic for a lot of people.
Well, you know, I'm one of the things I comment on a lot. I've got a lot of useless knowledge rolling around in my noggin, so it's kind of nice to get some of it off. You know, it's kind of like an external hard drive, right? So what I need to do is I get so much data in there, I need to kick some of it off every once in a while. So
we'll see how much we can knock out tonight.
Yeah, so it's interesting because I actually got some history in Vegas. I did some surveying work. You guys were talking about racetrack a while ago, and it reminded me of me and Mike when they were building the Las Vegas Speedway, when they were still doing dirt work out there. Me and him got chased off of that site. We weren't surveying on it, but we were out there in the company truck running circles on it. So yeah, it wasn't long. We had 4 or 5 vehicles behind us chasing us off the site. So it's amazing how you can get on restricted sites with a surveying name on the side of your truck. But
exactly.
Yeah. But and I did some work downtown Fremont on all that concrete swirl crazy. I was on my hands and knees, seemed like for months down there, every 2 foot making a mark, and then we would take a piece of PVC pipe and bend it and take a magic marker and draw it, and then that night they'd come back with a saw and saw cut the line across there. So that was interesting. That's a very crazy place to hang out for a while. You meet a lot of really cool individuals.
Come back now, it's even crazier.
I can imagine. So yeah, so I've got some history back there in that part of the world. I've been surveying since like 1986, something like that. And you know, I've got just, I call it a lot of useless information roll around my head about, you know, since I've been selling Trimble for the last 15 years. I'm very, very fortunate. That's the part I love about this job, being able to keep up with technology. So, you know, whether it's scanning, you know, robotics, total stations, whatever. I've installed a ton of reference stations. I do a lot of stuff. I look at my role as a salesperson more about you don't have time to do the research. You don't have time to figure out. You just need to know what you need, and you need to get the job done as efficiently and quickly as possible. So that's where all of my customers lean on me pretty heavy. And, you know, I work really closely with a lot of them on a lot of stuff. When Kent and I were talking about this, this deal today, we're talking about field to finish, and it just so happens I'm working with about 3 companies at the same time, trying to streamline their field collection. One of the guys told me, he's out of Gulf Breeze, and he said, man,
we'll listen in on it.
We you know, we do the best. You know, we go out and survey, we collect data, we've got it all streamlined. Come to find out, he didn't know anything about Descriptor Keys. He has no primary feature library. He has nothing. So what he thinks is streamlined is not even close after I explained everything to him. So are you, I see most of you muted, but I was going to ask, anybody using feature codes now at all?
I use them.
Yes.
I was gonna say Nick.
So
Nick's gonna have to chime in a lot.
yeah, just chime in. This is open forum.
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about feature codes. So feature codes, there's different aspects of a feature code. A feature code can be simply drawing lines on the data collector. It can be collecting attributes. You could be using the camera in your data collector, be collecting photographs. So a lot of people will do the feature codes in the data collector, and then they will literally export that out and do the line work actually in AutoCAD. So how are you guys doing line work?
We do that AutoCAD. We have line work codes in AutoCAD and Microstation.
Gotcha. So Microstation command codes are a little bit different because of they really want the command code in front of the descriptor in most
Correct.
cases. So that kind of makes it a little bit challenging for some people. So attributes. Anybody using attributes?
Yes, sir.
Cool. Okay. So you know that you can actually bypass Business Center altogether. So you can go into just download a copy of Business Center off the website if you wanted to, and not even get a licensed copy to do feature codes and stuff. So anybody got a licensed copy of Business Center they're using, or should I say anybody doesn't have?
We do.
I heard one.
Yeah, I have license.
Okay. So let me see if I can move this thing out of my way. Yeah, let's move that over there. Okay, so when you're doing feature codes, see if I opened it up over here. So I've got some that I've been playing with, some different ones. I'll show you this Seaside one that I've been messing with a little bit. These are some guys that do a lot of work, but they don't really use feature codes very often. I mean, they use them as far as, you know, entering the information into the data collector, but as far as using feature codes, they don't. So just to kind of run through some stuff with you, you've got different aspects of feature codes. So when we say new, you have new category, new feature definition, new line definition, so forth and so on. You have your line codes. And I think the thing that's probably missed the most is this one right here called new group. So new group, what that group is when you go into Access and you say measure codes, that's where this group is at. So you can pull down on your grouping. If you go into the feature codes, you can actually pull down and choose a group. So a lot of us do it by hand. We'll do topo, cross sections, whatever, but those can actually be built in the feature code library. So since there's just a small group of us on here, it might be better if you guys ask me some questions about this, so I kind of know which direction you guys want to go if you're already using them.
Yeah, I would say, is anybody, Nick, you use them pretty much fully automated, or are you just using feature codes?
No, I'm using them pretty automated. That new export and import of your layout for like your measure codes is pretty cool, because you can set up all the tiles, have them preset, and you can export them to the different data collectors. You don't have to set it up in each data collector. So you can just put your top 25 most used codes on the first page, and then you can scroll through it, and it makes it really handy when you have a lot of crews.
Yeah, so you're talking about I don't have anything set up, but under project manager, it'll have the feature codes over here where you can actually choose what you want to and send it out. Are you using the send to sync to make that happen?
No, just exporting the file format and bringing it into the folder and the data collector.
Okay, so this sync thing will let you, if you're using Trimble Connect and the sync, this is actually pretty cool on sending stuff. You know, if you want to send something out to the data collector, you can send it straight out of Business Center if you're already doing that. Pretty handy. So when you built your feature codes, what are you doing about your layering and stuff like that?
I didn't actually build it. The guys at our Pleasant Grove office built it. We've got it for N.dot codes, U.dot codes,
Gotcha.
you know, different code libraries for, and different things. But yeah, each one of them has attributes to it, and it's pretty in-depth.
Extensive. Yeah, that's cool. It's funny because I was using the SDR33 back in the late 80s, and I was doing line work and using leaks mapping software to send the data. It's kind of like with Business Center. You built it, and then you would export it out of the SDR. You bring it into leaks mapping tools. Leaks mapping tools would draw everything, and then you'd send that to Autocad back in the day. So I've been playing with line work for a long time, and it amazes me that people don't use it. So I'm going to show you a trick you may or may not know if you want to build them. So Civil 3D has a DWT. I have not tried this with Microstation because I don't own a copy of Microstation. I don't mess with Microstation. I know nothing about Microstation. So just FYI. But Civil 3D, you can take the DWT, your drawing template, and you can just easily drop and drag it. And once you do that, it's going to import everything in there. I don't have any kind of project set up, so no, because what I'm looking for, if I come over here, you can see now all those layers that they had in their DWT is now in here. So now then, in order to get that to my feature definition manager, if you go up to, let's see if I can find it here. Where's it at? Layer manager. So if you notice on layer manager, you've got an import and export. So I can control, let's see if it'll let me do control all, and I'll just select all of them. Now I can export, and when I export, it will export out a layer format. So now if I'm building my feature codes in my feature definition manager, and if I'm working on any codes, like if I do a new point feature, and then if I go to layer in here, these are some that I've added in, but you can actually go in and you can import these layers into here so that it's looking for that layer file. So when I import that in, then I've got all those same layers are over here as well. And that's just by going by the DWT. Now, some of you guys might be able to help me with that I've been struggling with has been line work, bringing line work in here out of Civil 3D into here, because line work, line styles are not the easiest thing to find in Civil 3D. So I don't know how you guys are handling your line work coming in and out.
Yeah, and that's kind of, I think, really what my thought with trying to get out of this today would be almost from the shooting side of it in the field to be able to create that auto line work by the time you draw it in. Even if it's just drawn in on layer 0, but it connects the dots and throws all the line.
Well,
that's
the key.
So
if you set it up correctly,
yeah,
then you don't have to
right. Don't have to go and change layers on everything, but
yeah, when it comes in, it's on the right layer. But if you're just that works great in the data collector, it's on a layer. If you're not bringing it into Business Center, it's a moot point because you're bringing it over into AutoCAD. Then it needs to be, hopefully you've got your descriptor keys set up with the right layer and everything else. So I was actually looking for a video of, and if I can find it, I'll share it with you guys. Ray Wu used to work at Trimble Business Center. Girl was super sharp, and she built a video on this whole process. So are you familiar with descriptor keys and how to use those? Because all this ties together. One big package. Let's see if I can find Civil 3D over there. Let's see here. Civil 3D English. Imperial. Let's open this up. And it opens up on the other screen. Okay, here we go. So when you're in here and you're when you're messing with all this, you're trying to set it up. When you go into points, descriptor keys, this is your and it keeps popping up on the other screen. Come over here. So this is some default stuff that they've got in here, but your descriptor keys, basically you've got your code and your style, your point style. So with Civil 3D, the way it works is, and this is something I don't really understand why some people do it, but a lot of people, instead of trying to use descriptor keys, they try to use their point manager, point group manager. That's not how I was trained to use it. But descriptor keys is where you're going to bring in your code and everything in here, and you're going to force it to land on the right layer. Now with Civil 3D, your point style label. So if I said existing rebarred cap, so my symbol for an existing rebarred cap should be tied to that point label style, so that when I import that in, it actually puts that on there without the other information on there. So are you guys taking the whole process? Is that the way you guys are bringing stuff in? Dang, you guys don't need me. Sound like you got it going on. So, I was trying to think of some data that I had somewhere. So photographs come in. Do you guys use the data collector for taking photographs?
Yes.
Sometimes.
What do you do
Yes,
with those
sir.
photographs once you take them?
So what we've done in the past at my last firm is we would take, if we were doing a boundary search, we would notate whatever we found, and then we would take a picture. And that picture would be, after you take the picture, you go back in the Trimble access, and it asks if you want to associate with that previous point.
Mm-hmm.
It would associate that image with the previous point. And my understanding, one of the things I understand is in Trimble access, it will bring in the image with the point. But if you tried tying it in, if you just tried dumping it straight into CAD, it wouldn't.
So the problem with that is that there is, like ArcView and ArcMap and all those things, you can automatically build a hyperlink for a photograph, but AutoCAD doesn't do that. It doesn't create an automatic hyperlink. So when you bring in a point into Civil 3D, you have to manually hyperlink it. Now, this is where it gets interesting, because I've got a whole thing that I'm working on, and I'm trying to sort out all the pieces and puzzles. But imagine that you've got a client that you're working with, and you're going to create a PDF to give to that client. So my goal, if I ever have a few free minutes where I can put this together, my goal is that as surveyors, we're going to quit handing over a 24 by 36 or an 8.5 by 11 or whatever to our clients, and start handing over straight up digital. And when I say that, I mean, we're talking about more than just send them a PDF. Here's a copy of your survey. Because in Arkansas, what happened there was somehow or another, the unlicensed professionals in the GIS world managed to get in charge of the licensed professionals. So we have a GIS manager that now controls the state land surveyor's office. I threw a fit. I had, excuse my language, shit conniption fit running backwards. I chewed out the assistant governor. You wouldn't believe what I went through. I was about as redneck as they get, because I could not believe I spent all this time surveying and learning what I had to learn, and some guy that builds some kind of map that I could throw a rock and get it that close is now in charge of the state land surveyor's office and the decisions that are made in the state land surveyor's office. That's what got me. The reason is because they produce a pretty map. We don't. Our maps are a piece of property that is handed off on a $2 piece of paper to a client. Their maps are put on a website so anybody can sit there and see it. So to me, that's where we're missing a boat. And I think feature codes and attributes and all these things can help us get to that point. And then there's even a GIS tie if you wanted to get into GIS and building databases and doing something with all this data that you could do. The trick is going to be is how do we create a survey? How do we add more value to that survey for our client? So to me, if we're taking pictures with the data collector, what are we doing with the pictures? Where are they going? Who gets them? You get to see you get to find out that that 2-inch steel pipe is actually a fence corner and not a property corner. I mean, is that all it's good for? Because I envision, if you're used to using Trimble equipment, you know that you can do a station view with a total station with a robot, like a VX or an S7 or something like that, SX10. You can do a 360 panorama. What do we do with that data, right? To me, you take a PDF, you put a symbol on there of some kind, and all these pictures you take out there in the field, get on that PDF and get a hyperlink to that PDF. So when you send customer some information, not only are you sending them the PDF, but you're sending a folder attached to it. That folder has all the photographs attached to it. So when that client goes on, opens up that PDF, he also gets the picture. Now then, the question for me is, where do the pictures actually go? Do I set up a hyperlink when I send them that information that ties back to my server? Do I have it set up on a Dropbox? Where are those pictures at? Are they on a folder to where the customer actually has to take the PDF and has to take the folder, and those have to be in the same directory and they're hyperlinked that way? Those are the things I'm trying to work out. You see what I mean?
Can
So
you
that the
hyperlink?
information. Do what?
I was going to ask a question. Can you directly hyperlink the images into the PDF? It would probably make the PDF humongous, but is that a possibility?
Unless there's a change, there's no way to embed it in the PDF. A hyperlink is
Okay.
considered a reference.
Okay.
So it's actually literally a separate folder. And I've played around with this and I've done some stuff. I've done some presentations with this, and it's really cool. I put like a triangle down and called it a station image. And I was doing some stuff with the S7 robot and was able to hyperlink all that. You could go in and click on it and that image popped up. And, you know, I go back to that same thing. We've got to figure out a better way to create a deliverable to give to our clients. Because if we don't, we're going to be boundary surveyors. End of story.
I will tell you, just on that same topic, Orange County Public Works down in Orange County, California, they're using a lot of the Isery platform to do a lot of their internal deliverables. So, and then kind of what you're talking about there, we could utilize kind of the same platform that we get these hyperlink title reports from, right? And try to use it that way, use that same technology that we're getting these title reports from. But again, those links, they always kind of time out. So we're going to have to figure out how to get through that, or
you got to host it somewhere.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. It's got to be hosted.
What's going to happen?
So,
you know, you're going to have to be responsible on your website for hosting it. So
everybody's kind of turning to a cloud base.
Yeah, exactly. Leaf. Yep.
That everything, you know, I just lost my subscription to Symbol 3D because, you know, they want you to rent it instead of buy it. So this was last year, I guess, would have been the last year I could renew it. This year, they wouldn't let me renew it. They want me to go into the rental program. And I was like, nah, I don't use it that often. I don't really need it.
Yeah.
So, but with all the pictures and with all the information and everything that we've got, to me, it's a no-brainer, right? To be able to put all that data together. And we've got to start doing something. Just gonna look and see if I had something with some pictures in it. Have you guys seen the video I did on has to do with the R8S, and it's like part 2 or something like that. In that video, I IFXL files. I'm not exactly sure any IFXL files. What is that?
Hey, Robert,
Just
I agree with you. Wait a minute, am I muted?
No, you're good.
nope, you're there. I'm listening.
Okay. I agree with you about being able to add value to what we're providing our clients. But if we're going to do that, we need to get our heads out of our rear ends and charge for that value, because we don't do that. We've given this technology away for decades.
So you don't really want me to get on my soapbox, do you?
Well, that's the,
It'll take up the rest of the meeting.
Yeah.
that's the new
So,
idea.
Do you not agree with that? I mean,
dude, gosh, dang it. We, as surveyors, any surveyor charging less than $300 an hour is giving his work away. Because I did a project in Springdale, Arkansas. I did the Lowe's store, did all the construction layout. Ozark Civil was the engineer. I did the construction layout. Ozark Civil was engineer on a Sizzler that was next door. Navajo's Construction came to me and said, we need you to lay out the Sizzler. The surveyors we had on site, they're not there anymore. We're having problems with the grades, blah, blah, blah. And I was known as a problem solver back in the day. And I told him, dude, I think his name was Aaron or something like that from Navajo's. And I told him, I ain't got time. I had like 5 crews running, and plus what I was doing. And I had another surveyor in the office who was helping me review plats and create easements and everything else. I'm like, I just don't have time. And they said, we've got to have you out there. And I'm like, I just can't do it. And then he kept on and on and on. Finally, I said, I'll tell you what, $300 an hour, I'll be out there Monday. This is on a Friday. He said, if you're out there on Monday at 8 o'clock, I will pay you $300 an hour. I was out there for 10 hours on that job. That was in 06, by the way. Now, you tell me why we can't be charged $300 an hour right now. I was charging for one truck to go out with a GPS and a robot. I was charging $250 an hour back in 06 because I looked at it as I had a GPS unit and a robot in the truck. So that was like having 2 crews. One guy run the GPS, one guy run the robot, and I charged double for that. And I didn't charge 2-man, 3-man, 4-man. It was just a crew was $125.
Those were that was 06. I mean, that was the heyday. 07 started towards the end of 07, started to taper off. But yeah, I mean, you could send a proposal and for $250,000 and get it back signed in 10 minutes because they couldn't. We're almost to the same boat again where we're so busy right now that they're just buying surveyors. So it's tough.
But see, I think that things like these feature codes and these photographs and stuff like that, that's part of what makes separate you, right? Because I have this conversation with surveyors all the time. If you've got a surveyor down the road, what differentiates you from that surveyor? What makes you different? If you got a drone and he doesn't, you put up-to-date aerial imagery behind your survey, he doesn't. Those things help, because if you don't have something to separate you from the guy down the road, the only thing that's going to separate you is price. If he's cheaper, he's $100 cheaper, they're going to use him.
I remember with the Geotometer 400, that is as fast as your finger could insert those ASCII key codes, and then you developed into a P code with that.
Yeah.
Cloud-based data server companies and getting hooked up with those now seems to be a path that people are taking, because accessibility to your information off the cloud, you can charge for that, and then they can access to that once they've paid you.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, you can literally relinquish control of it once they paid you. They might be able to view it. They might be able to do different things, but they can't possess it. Got a big watermark across it. It's on a server somewhere. You want it? You don't pay me, I'll send it to you.
And then at
You know,
any one time also, Robert, if they don't pay you after they've started using it, you could cancel their ability to get to that information. So,
absolutely. But I was big on, I got money up front. If you want me to do a big project, I need 25% of it before I'll even step foot on the project. So, I mean, contracts are huge. I know, was it Gary Kent or somebody did a deal a while back on contracts? And I think contracts are huge anymore. I mean, I hate to say this, but you just can't trust anymore. They'll tell you anything.
well, you still have to fight state regulatory laws and stuff on that, on how you charge an individuals for projects.
Yeah, contracts. You know, the money that we could spend on an attorney up front to straighten some of the stuff out for us would be money well spent, I think. So, but like I said, man, that's my soapbox, right? I get really frustrated. Now, keeping in mind, I come from Northwest Arkansas, where the ASPS, the Arkansas Society of Professional Surveyors, actually got sued by the federal government for price fixing. I've got the document somewhere.
Crazy.
I know all the people that were involved. So yeah.
Okay, so
So
you got your photos, you got your attributes.
mhm.
What do you got?
So what I got going on right now is I was just looking for some data. So you see this little icon, this little image right here? On this point number 106. If I highlight that, click on it, right click, I can open it up. And there's the image. Now then, if I go, if I go to properties, should be able to see, trying to think of where that's at. Let me dig a little deeper here. Let's see if I click on right there. You go to properties. There it is. That's what I was looking for. So here's the file path. So if I was going to hyperlink into Civil 3D, I want to hyperlink this image. This would be the file path. But see where it's stored? It's stored under Documents, Trimble Business Center, right? So that's where the file is actually stored at. Now, the problem you have with hyperlinking is when you're taking it into Autocad is it needs to know the directory it's going to. Well, like right now, this is residing on my C drive. If I was to move this somewhere, that hyperlink is broke. So that's where I think a surveyor, as he's sitting there and he's putting all this information together, he should be able to compile this data someplace, somehow, somewhere. And that's some of the stuff I'm still kind of scratching on, whether it be an FTP site or a Dropbox or a server, to where that data resides in a spot that never moves. You know what I mean?
We use ProjectWise to do that.
That's a good little program. I've seen that, a few guys using it. So let's see what
ProjectWise, what is ProjectWise?
I was just doing the same thing, Danny.
It's a Bentley Microstations
Yep.
cloud.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's part of
cloud-based,
the Bentley
yeah.
package.
It's been a few years since I used any Bentley products.
And there's a lot of different stuff out there, because like you've got gosh, what some of the other ones that some people are using, but there's a lot of cloud-based different things that you can use the same way. Scene, for instance, just off the top of my head, Faro, Scene's got a deal very similar to that, to where there's actually a place where you put all that scan data, the repository for everything, and then you can pull off that. It's a web-based. I mean, Trimble's got their Trimble Connect. I mean, it's just, there's just stuff everywhere. They're trying to take like Trimble Connect to where even like you would be able to view different file types and stuff. So when you drop it on Trimble Connect, if it's an LAS file, an RCP, a job file, whatever, you'd actually be able to view that in some way or another. And that's all cloud-based stuff. So
Hey, Nick Ariotti, you're gonna have to do a presentation on ProjectWise.
well, it's great for the Bentley guys to to be able to do that.
Well, we put our AutoCAD projects on there. It's just nice because you check out a job and you know who has it open. That way you're not saving on top of each other. Just little things like that is really, and you can share it real easy.
It's pretty cool looking.
Yeah, and it has a way to connect to AutoCAD, so you can run like a little applet inside AutoCAD, so you can open your projects right in AutoCAD from your ProjectWise.
Gotcha. Nice.
You might be careful with that because AutoCAD, they're pretty particular about their ability to deal with data, so some outfits and AutoCAD, you know.
It's funny.
Yeah, yeah, I had a big, long discussion with Autocad just the other day. I don't think they like me much anymore.
Uh-oh.
Hey, Robert, on your YouTube channel, do you have anything specific about setting up a feature code library that we could talk
I have a little bit. I'm actually looking at building a new video. And guys, there's one thing I definitely have to apologize for on my YouTube channel is the names of some of these videos that I have are actually kind of retarded. But have you ever tried to name a, let me see if I can get to, have you ever tried to name a video that's got a lot of crap in it? So it makes it very difficult. So the one that's got projections in it, I mean, nobody knows that has to do with like moving points and stuff like that to different places, like taking something that's, you know, you want to shot at 5,000, but you want to move it to state plane. So
yeah, I watch that one.
the
Fix the
two-
projection problem. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's okay, here's part one. Even create volumes and stuff like that. So let's see here. Oh, it's going to pop up an ad now. Yeah, it caught me.
Do you get your ad revenue money for that?
Oh, you know what? Just any day now, I'm going to retire. I make about $125 a month off YouTube. So I'm looking at retiring just any time. So let's see here.
Hey, Robert, $125 a month is better than a poke in the eye with a sharp stick.
Not by much, according to my wife. So just to give you an idea, you see that? That's almost $4,000. That's almost $3,000. There's a couple $100 right there, and I have about $300 on the lens. That's just, and I've got, I don't know, 3 or 4 cameras behind me back here. It's nuts. I kind of went a little deep. So this video shows collecting the data. It's going to try to get to right there. I was actually looking for this data set and I'm not finding it. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking a picture of the pedestal with the camera. So I'm shooting it, taking a picture. You guys notice that the view, everybody's like, are you using a drone? No, it's a 360 camera I'm using to do this with.
What type of controller is that? Is that the tablet or the 7?
The 7, TSC 7. So I'm actually taking a picture of the face of it to get all the information. How, you know, I mean, the surveyor standing there with the field book trying to write all that information down, right? So in here, I've got different, just some different stuff you can custom build, which if you guys are doing attributes and stuff, you're well aware of all this. So, you know, being able to take the pictures. This video is actually pretty cool because I go in and I take pictures of some power poles and that's me swinging a pole around there. And we can go into another ad. I hope this is making me money. So you can pinch and zoom and all that good stuff on that with that data collector and take a picture of that pole. So now I've got all the connection points and everything on there. So as we go through and collect all that information, I'm actually sitting inside of the shop building right now, by the way. So what I'm doing is taking pictures and drawing lines, of course, but I take 2 different pictures. One picture I take of the corner, and are you guys familiar with editing the photographs on how to do that?
No. Let's talk about it.
So I think this is a really cool feature. Let's see if I show it in here. So there's what you were talking about associating the point name with it. So being able to go in and pull that image back up after the fact. So you go into the raw data and you can actually pull that image up and you can draw on that image. So let's say that you need a direction, like a north arrow or something like that. So you click on the media file, I go in, I can say draw, and then I can actually draw on the photograph itself. Now, in the options menu, I can say either, you can see where it says save original image, so it will store 2 images. So I can save the clean image that I didn't draw on, and I can save the image that I did draw on. So what that does is it lets you throw a north arrow, put a description on it. I tell guys all the time, like box culverts, you can actually draw on the box culvert and give it a dimension and a size. So pretty handy to be able to do all that. So let's see, I'm showing you how to do the thick line, thin line.
Yeah, that could be pretty
There we
cool.
go.
There you go.
Yeah, so it's southeast corner. Now just you can do text. I'm just drawing it with my finger on line.
And it renames
So-
that. It renames that particular picture, edited picture. It renames
Yep.
it so that you don't.
If
get
you save original image, it will edit this picture, and it will edit the or it won't edit, I should say. It gives you the clean original picture and gives you the edited picture. So you have both of them. When you pull it up in Business Center, there will be 2 images in there.
Yeah, so they don't confuse the images.
Yeah. So I did this piece. This is that's part 1. And then part 2 is more about processing the data. Oh boy, I know it's in here somewhere. What I do with it? Sometimes I say I don't have enough videos. Sometimes I say I have too many videos. Where's it at? There's a part 2 somewhere in here. You see it? Holler out. Part 2, there it is. Okay, so in part 2, I'm going in and I'm processing all this data that I collected. So, and we got another ad.
You need YouTube Premium.
Apparently. I don't usually go back and watch my own videos, so it's usually not an issue. So I was actually looking for this data set today, and it may be on my backup drive somewhere. I looked for it in between. I was messing with some sight vision stuff today, so I've been just buried all day long. But I go in here and I show you what to do with all this data, how to collect it. I go all the way in. Oh, more ads. Great. Yeah, YouTube Premium would be a good idea. I agree with you, especially if I'm going to do much of this. So I go all the way in because Business Center is a very, very powerful tool. So I can actually go in and create. I think I'm actually creating cross sections maybe at this point. I went in and created the surface, and then I created the cross section. So processing your feature codes in Business Center, to me, Business Center is a point management tool. Okay. So if I go into Business Center and I bring all my data in, I've got, see all these images in here where I took pictures of those poles and different things. So I've got all these images to reference to, so I can go back and look at my images and QC whatever it is. I was making the joke a while ago about a 2-inch pipe, right? So I actually had a surveyor that had an issue, and it saved his butt because the guy in the field took a picture of the property corner that he shot, and come to find out, when you really looked at it, you zoomed down on it, it was literally a chain link fence post that had been sawed off close to the ground. The guy out in the field assumed that that was the property corner. Well, you know, the property corner is usually not far from there, but it's not the property corner. So that saved him from having a mistake on the survey. And I mean, those photographs are huge. There are so many things that we can do nowadays that we're running Windows 10 on these tablets. And I don't know if you guys are familiar, but in order to be Windows certified, the screen cannot be any smaller than 7 inches with Windows. and I believe it can't be any smaller than 5 inches with Android. So that's the reason for the size of the data collectors that you're seeing today. It's because of the manufacturers and the background with that, right? Question?
I think
Well,
go for it.
I was gonna ask a quick question.
Shoot.
The new company I'm going to, they use Carlson, and can you import the data from Carlson into TBC as far as processing the points and
You can.
working that way? You can. Okay.
So the only issue that I am aware of is that I ran into,
So,
and this has been a while back, was with the GPS. There was some issues with antenna offsets that I saw with Carlson GPS. Carlson doesn't have their own GPS. That creates a problem. Carlson's GPS are actually hemisphere. They're a Chinese-made receiver. So when you bring that information in, if the drivers that Trimble has for some reason or another doesn't line up exactly with this new receiver that they put out, because they got no standards, right? So when they bring it in, the antenna calibration and antenna offsets may not be there. So you got to be careful with that.
Okay.
I actually had somebody that ignored the warning down in Louisiana that bought R12s, and they didn't update their Trimble Business Center. So when they brought it in, it popped up and it said unrecognized antenna. Well, he just said, okay, and went on. What he didn't realize was that his height measurement was now to the phase center of the antenna, because that was the height. He gave it 2 meters, right? Because it said unrecognized antenna, that height automatically went to the phase center. He could have very easily went back and corrected that in the software if he'd have understood that because he didn't update, and it's a super simple update to do, to put those antenna patch files in here, but he didn't know or understand, and that created a huge problem on the job site for him. Of course,
Robert?
he wanted to blame everybody else. Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed that too, like with the Zephyr antenna, between the 2 and the 3, the height difference to phase center is different. So if you just replace your Zephyr 2 with the Zephyr 3 on a base or something, you're just assume that it's the same, you're going to come up with a difference in elevation as well.
Did you know the R10 and the R12 are the same way? They're different phase center for each antenna.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've got the drawings for both when people start asking me questions, because a lot of people don't. I think Mike McGinnis, the guy that I consider him my mentor with GPS, something that he told me a long time ago was GPS just lets you screw up things faster. I think he had a point.
Exactly. Zach Gooch, he's the one that emailed us the question the other day, last night. If you want.
Oh yeah.
He just jumped on, so you might be able to kind of talk about his question that he had.
Hey, Robert, how's it going? Hey,
good, man. I hear you have a duplicate point tolerance error is what I heard.
Yeah, I don't really. It's a thing that we've noticed since we went to the 7s. Say like, I guess you're familiar with what I was asking about. Like, say I'm going to shoot in a corner, say is 0.1, okay, and then I want to change phase to double it in, I guess. I watched a lot of your videos on, averaging GPS shots where you store another, and sometimes when I do that with, the total station, it's not giving me the screen to come up to say average, store another. It just stores it again, and it doesn't give me any kind of screen option on that.
So there's 2 different reasons for that. Either you're a really good surveyor or you're sloppy. I think some days you're a really good surveyor and some days you're sloppy.
Okay, so it could be that maybe
I'll show you what's going on.
Tight enough. Okay, yeah, please do. That's the thing we've been wondering about.
Yeah. So, that's a bad thing about the good thing about Trimble is there's a lot of options. The bad thing about Trimble is there's a lot of options. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So this is under your, when you go into your survey styles and everything, this is under your survey styles. It's called duplicate point tolerance. I talk a little bit about this with the GPS.
Actually,
And I really wishing I had done a video on, with the robot. Of course, like right now, all my robots are loaned out. I don't even have one in my possession. So,
right.
but what you've got is if you've got it, depending on how you've got it set up.
Mm-hmm.
So you could have the auto average turned on.
Yeah.
And so it's going to auto average tolerance. And this is the tolerance for the auto average. So you might want to go in and look. Let's back up. I just went into here.
I'm gonna write this down, actually.
See where you got, let me back out one more.
This will be recorded.
So if I go into your survey styles,
Okay.
go into VXS series,
Actually.
edit, duplicate point tolerance right there.
Okay.
First thing I'd look to see if an auto average is turned on.
Okay.
If not, see if somebody has changed this distance right here.
Mm-hmm.
And typically I like to leave this as default because I want to know if there is thousands change in something, right?
Right.
So this is where you would look to see where this duplicate point tolerance is at. And my guess is what's happening to you is one day you're turning a really good angle and it's fitting so tight that it's auto averaging those points for you.
Okay.
And the next day you had one too many Coronas and you're not turning as tight an angle.
Okay.
Or maybe Dos Equis. I drink Dos Equis, but so that's kind of my thought is that it's probably right here is where it's happening to you.
Okay. So if I go into the survey styles and the VX and S, I can't see your screen right now. I'm on my phone. I couldn't get the computer going in time.
Gotcha.
I go into VX and S and instrument, you say?
Yeah. So let me walk you through it. Let me back up.
Okay.
Back up.
I've got the collector here. I'm looking at it while
Okay.
you tell me about it.
I
If
can
that's
actually
okay.
see you. Yeah, I can actually see you. So hit the hamburger button up there in the left-hand corner. Go down to settings. Go to survey styles.
Settings, survey styles. I'm there.
VXS series. You see that?
That is me. I have it up.
Go
Duplicate
to-
point tolerance. That's what you
Right
said,
there.
wasn't it? Okay. Auto average, no.
Okay. So look at that up at the top. Same point name. That's
Mhm.
that's your if it's inside that 10 seconds and 20 seconds, and if your
Yeah.
horizontal distance ties nuts, which would be a very, very big rarity.
Yeah, I have
That
it at
can be caused now.
0.0000. Yes.
Okay. So if you're doing an F1, F2 where you're flopping the scope,
Right.
look at your F1, F2 observations down below your auto average. So if
10
you're within
seconds
10
horizontal.
seconds,
Yeah.
20 seconds vertical, and your slope
Yep.
distance is within 700s.
Yep. That's okay. So maybe it's going to 11 seconds off on the horizontal angle when it turns and
Exactly. That's your
Okay.
F1, F2. So if you're flopping the scope back and forth,
Mhm.
you're going to be tied to this F1, F2.
Okay, so that would be it's actually doing it the whole time. I just sometimes maybe just a little bit tighter than others. And
Like I said, sometimes you've had a little bit too much beer, sometimes not enough. It just depends on the
Okay.
day. Right?
all right, well, I appreciate that. That's a big question I had. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah,
Sometimes
no
with,
problem.
sometimes with Trimble, I've been using Trimble since day one. If you set your tolerances too tight, you're asking for trouble. You need to open them up a little bit. You may be doing tighter work, but when you set it too tight, you're asking too much from what you're trying to do. So
Right.
The only reason I like my tolerances tight is when I'm setting a control point, and I'm kind of anal as far as I want to know. If it's 1,000ths difference, I want to know. I personally want to be able to go average myself
Yeah,
instead of
you need to look at
instead
what
of
you're
an-
doing and expect what you're, out of that,
Exactly.
what type of work you're doing. You know, I've done
Yeah.
high machinery tolerances where, you know, the client was asking for 0.2 millimeters. So, you know, it's a matter of what you're doing and how you're doing it. But with Trimble, and just from my experience, and you know, I'm sure you'll say the same thing. Sometimes let your tolerances out a little bit, and then the gun won't force itself to make those kinds of decisions.
Mhm. It just depends on what you're doing. You know, if I was doing, I know guys that do topo work that want to do phase 1, phase 2 observations. Not me. These guns are pretty tight these days. So, and if I was doing something along that type of work, I definitely would want it to auto average. I wouldn't have to make that decision every time.
Right.
So yeah.
Cool.
Good
So
deal.
what else you got? Any other questions?
Yeah. Anybody,
No,
anybody
sorry.
else? No, you're good, Zach. Anybody else got specific questions?
Hey, Trent, this is Rob McMillan.
Go for it.
This question is actually for Zach. Are you doing your instrument collimations fairly often, or that might be something where if you're not doing your collimation and things change since the last time, then
Mm-hmm.
your instrument could be exceeding those tolerances.
Oh, that's okay. I'll look into that also. We try to, but you know.
Now, I'm no expert on the S6 or S7 or any of those, but looks like a couple of my Caltrans guys that were on here that have jumped off. But you know, that's a possibility. Is
Okay.
running that collimation routine, and that kind of, you know, particularly if your conditions change where you're working. If you're working in one place where it's, well, it might be in the same place where it's cold one day and hot the next.
Right.
And that's impacting your instrument and how the instrument actually operates.
You know,
Okay.
Trimble recommends that, Rob. Trimble recommends that quite often to, you know, to do that while at your setup. Because these guns aren't made out of metal casings no more. They're made out of plastic. And just even as the sun goes across them, affects them slightly. You know, and their magnetic base, electronic magnetic, that holds the gun in position, and then just the slightest variation of heat, and it, you know, can change your setting, you know, internal settings to function. They're supposed to be good, but you know, there's always that little bit with them.
Sounds good. I'll definitely look into that also, into see if that can help.
And Robert, on the slope distance, you had 6.5 thousandths. Those, yeah, 6.5 hundredths on your slope distance tolerances there. That seems
That
like
is definitely default, because that is I'm looking at an emulator right now.
okay. That just seemed like a hell of a lot to me.
I would agree. And these are default settings that nobody ever looks at.
Yeah, I've got 6,600 set, or 66,000, sorry, on slope distance. That's factory set.
That's not close enough for the girls I date.
Station setup completed.
So it's actually looking for something.
What do you recommend putting that at instead of the 66 thousandths?
What's your tolerance? What's the boss man told you?
I mean, this isn't for the bridge work or anything. Let's see.
I mean, if you're doing, what are you doing F1 and F2 on? That would be the big question.
Really, just I was playing with it to see about like tightening up property corners, just to get you know, I wanted to try a little bit better than just standard 5 observation shots. And I wanted to play with it and see if we could average them the same way that we averaged those GPS shots by flipping the barrel and averaging it again. Just tighten it up a little bit if we needed to. But the things I was doing that with, there's no vertical involved, so it's all horizontal. So
yeah, well, never forget, if you're in state plane coordinates, horizontal and vertical are one and the same.
those wouldn't have been with state plane. So
Just assume coordinates.
yeah, assumed.
So yeah, I mean, you can tighten all that up. Your horizontal angle, vertical angle, slope distance, tighten it up, because what that's going to do is it's just going to pop up and tell you out of tolerance whenever you take that second shot.
Right.
And at which point you can either keep storing another, or you could say, go ahead and average it.
I'd kind of rather it just go ahead and tell me that, and I just know, well, okay, we're okay.
I'm that way with my GPS. I want, if it's off 1,000, I want to know with my GPS. If I'm averaging a point, then that point is important to me. So I want to know. So I would say tighten those numbers up, see what it looks like, and it's survey style, man. You could always go back and change it if you're like, oh, this is nuts, you know. So
good deal. No, I appreciate that. That's
from my
that's
past
something I'd
experience, just double that out. So from 0.6 go to 0.3.
okay.
You know? And depending on the type of gun you have, you got to remember it's looking at a prism. And
Right.
when you look at it, what's the thickness of a hair at 1,000 feet? You know, of your crosshair. Those are all things, you know, the gun's going to tell you itself internally what it's set up to do. You're going to look at it and say, okay. But I know from a fact, me using Trimble, like I said, for almost 40, you know, they're geodometers when they first started, and Zeiss. But just double it out. Instead of 10, put 5, you know?
Okay. I appreciate that.
So Robert, I have a question for you.
what you got?
So the SX10 is a 1-second gun.
Yep.
And when you're aiming at a 360 target, that target is a 5-second target. So how in the holy snot is that a 1-second gun?
It's worse than you think. It is a 1-second gun as far as specs go. It is a 1-second gun.
Right.
But you do not have a 1-second prism. So here's a little tidbit of information for you. I have taken a 3-second S5, I think it was. I went out 100 meters, which is where Trimble likes to do everything. I set up that 360 prism, and I rotated that 360 prism because I was looking for maximum error, because I had a guy laying out anchor bolts with 360 prism, which was not a real good idea. When you rotate that around, what I saw was a maximum error at 100 meters of 9 thousandths. Okay, so if you think about that, the way these guns work, all the S-series guns, it looks at the glass. So let's say you took a 360 prism and you took a Seiko prism and you set it side by side. What's going to happen is that gun is going to turn proportionally between those two, because the way it's designed to work is when you're rotating that glass around, it's trying to measure that glass to get you to the center of that prism. So I have guys that have issues with traversing, and I'm like, they're like, well, I used to run it with a Topcon total station and I'd bust flat. Well, that's great, but you were looking at the bottom of the pole. You weren't looking at the top of the pole. With the robot, you're looking at the top of the pole. It is so critical that if you're going to use a 360 prism, which I don't recommend for traversing, that you need to have one of those pieces of glass turned flat, that gun looking straight at that glass. I took a kind of crude, but I took a piece of duct tape and I cut it into like this triangle shape, and I put it on one of those. And my guys, I would tell them, if you're doing anything critical other than shooting a back curb, point this arrow towards that gun. And if you got to set a control point or anything else. So
nice.
So yeah, they're
Nice.
I get cracked up all the time by people that are trying to do 1-second work with the wrong tools. It's procedure, right? I mean, you take a 1/2-second gun, put it on a wooden tripod, you don't have a 1/2-second gun anymore. So,
Fair enough.
and a 1 second, even on a Trimax, is probably pushing it, in my opinion. So,
Perfect.
Don't
Anybody,
forget about your parts per million.
there you go.
so interesting story about that. So I had some guys there again, they're having problems with Traverse. So I set 2 points of the GPS, 8,500 feet apart with the GPS. Very, very careful. Averaged my shots, got my points. Set up my SX10, set up a Seco Prism, 8,500 feet down there on a bipod, and shot it. And I was playing around with the corrections and stuff like that, right? So I'm down here in South Mississippi, 35 miles from the coast, and I'm, it's weird. It's always been weird for me because I've been 400 to 1,500 foot in elevation, and down here we're like 10, 12. So it's odd for me, but we're right at sea level. So it's really hard to see ground and grid distances. But it's amazing how well that gun works and how well the data collector works. When you put your right temperature and pressure in and put your correct prism constant in, I was shooting distances at 8,500 feet that was matching within 100th of my GPS. Now you take all that off, you get rid of your parts per million, you get rid of, you screw up your prism, because I was trying to see what maybe was happening to some guys doing some traversing. So I was kind of all over the spectrum with that. It starts making a huge difference, even at sea level. So parts per million is pretty big.
Very cool. Any more specific questions before we let Robert's got to get on the road tomorrow and do some more sales, so he's got to pack, he's got to get ready, everything else. So anybody got more specific questions for Robert?
Robert, what is your service area? Do you service Colorado, or are we way too far for you?
Dude, since I started this YouTube channel, it seems like I go all the way to Ireland. So my territory, I can only sell equipment in my territory. So that's Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Panhandle, Florida. I cover Alabama and Panhandle, Florida. That's now my territory. I started out in Arkansas, sold my farm, moved to Mississippi. William said, "Hey, how about you covering Alabama and Panhandle, Florida?" Sure, I like driving. So, but I help people everywhere. I've had guys call me from Canada, lots of guys out of Texas calling me. So the video that I just did on the SP80 base and the R12 Rover came from a comment from a guy on Facebook that asked me how well that worked, because a dealer in Georgia was trying to convince him to buy an SP80 base and an R12 Rover. And he sent me a message, and I messaged him back, and I'm like, okay, there's a quirk with it. And I was like, you know what? Make a great video. So that's my latest video came from that. So I'm always looking for ideas on videos. Number one, feel free to drop me a line. My email address is robert@surveyingwithrobert.com. That would be easy to remember. And I mean, I had a guy from Texas with a Traverse that he blew up, or his guys blew up, and I tried my best to help him with it. I actually started at 4 o'clock one morning working on it for a couple of hours. I never did actually figure out what he did to cause the problem. We got it down to 4/10, but without being on site and turning angles and checking things, sometimes it's just impossible. I mean, I look at an angle and it's an angle. I can't do anything with it. So I'm always willing to lend a helping hand to something. So
excellent.
Yeah, appreciate that. Any more questions? Definitely. When I send out the review or the follow-up email, I put it in the first one too, but we'll send out his channel. I'll throw in his email address for you guys as well, but should be good to go.
Watch those 2 videos. And if you've got any questions about feature codes and how all this stuff works or anything, just hit me up. Like I said, it sounds to me like you guys pretty much got it nailed down. I mean, it's once you get in there and start building, it's not rocket science. My big thing is, if you don't have Business Center, you don't need Business Center to be able to create those feature codes. That's not a licensed part of it. So
perfect. All right. If nobody's got anything else, we definitely appreciate it, Robert.
I just wanted to add the one thing, the measure codes definition exporter is the one I've been using. And for some reason, I can't get it to pull up in TBC since I updated it. So I don't know if they've changed something, but that was the one I use a lot to send the measure codes layout to all the crews.
So when you say updated, when you updated at 5.4,
It was at 5.3, now I'm at 5.4.
so did you go and do the office updates? When you update Trimble Business Center, you really need to go back and go to Trimble Installation Manager and run the office updates on that.
Okay.
That is something a lot of people miss, just to make sure that you get all the updates for Business Center that you need. That's what got that guy in trouble, because he just rolled and didn't screen went blank there for a minute. See if I can get this to pull up real quick and I'll show you what I'm talking about.
Danny, you
Got
can
some really cool stuff I'm
also-
gonna work on, by the way.
Danny, you can also hook up with Trimble, and Trimble has an open format, open forum. Rob can tell you that get emails from them every week on questions that everybody has about TBC as well. TBC has its own.
Yeah, I'll grab those links. When we did the TBC stuff, Danny, we had a session on early on about TBC, and all of those links into each one of those individual forums were in there, but I'll throw them on this one as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I've got a video that I did on some reference stuff that I've got a bunch of links in the notes on the emails. I mean, on the videos. When I do a video, a lot of times I may not call it out, but you need to check in those notes, see if I put any links in there. See right here where it says office updates. I've already updated mine. So you need to make sure that you've got this updated on your Trimble Business Center, because you'd be amazed how incompatible they go from one version to the other is.
Perfect.
Sweet. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I suspect on your drawings now we're going to see photographs with links on them, on the PDFs and everything, right?
That's right. We're gonna have to play with that one. We'll have to dig into that a little more.
Yeah, I got goals to do the same thing.
All right. Sounds good. We appreciate it, Robert. Drive
Yeah, dude.
drive safe tomorrow. Thank you, guys.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it, guys. See
Have a
ya.
good night.
Thanks, Robert.
Bye, guys.
You.